let's just imagine this scenario. Imagine a teacher from Kansas who's passionate about his work being let go from his job because of some controversial TikToks. These TikTok videos raised objections from the board, and in one video he made some lighthearted jokes about farting in his classroom, and they were humorous to him and to his students. But it didn't stop there. Actually, it escalated when it was discovered that some of these videos were actually filmed in his classroom, and that was actually something that the board used in their case against him. Now, the school district has a policy about social media and maintaining professionalism and responsibility on platforms such as TikTok. So even on personal platforms, they stress that anything that's said online on a teacher's account should be something that they would say in a public meeting or to the media representing the school district. As a result, the teacher had to make a difficult choice. He had to either take down the videos or resign. And because he wanted to hold true to his principles, it ultimately led to his termination. So this story is a stark reminder that a lot of the things that we do outside of the classroom can actually have ramifications on our jobs. But it also makes me wonder, what are the ethical and legal boundaries for teachers? And how do they vary from state to state? Can teachers truly separate their professional lives from their personal lives in this profession? And what are the potential consequences for our actions outside of work? Now, it goes without saying that we are entitled to our personal and private lives. Teaching should not encroach on that because that's basically our time outside of school. We are off duty, and honestly, we should be able to do what we want to do because it's a free world. And just like any profession, we have the right to engage in any lawful or frankly unlawful activities when we're off duty. But the thing is, some people see us as role models because of how impressionable our students are and the influence that we have. And so they think that that influence and maybe the morality of being a teacher should translate outside of the classroom as well. And because of this, some people do view our behaviors outside of the classroom as something that they can scrutinize and something that can be held under a microscope, and we can be fired for things that maybe the community and society don't necessarily approve of. But I definitely think that what we do outside of the classroom should be protected because it is our lives. To a certain extent though. So I'm gonna dive into some of that gray area because let's be real, there are things that if we do them outside of the classroom, we probably shouldn't be allowed to teach. So let's talk about legal considerations. Now, let me preface this by saying that I am not a lawyer, I am not a legal expert, and what I know is based on what's available on the internet, what is Googleable. So don't come back at me and say, you said I can get fired for this, but I wasn't, or you said that I cannot get fired for this, and I was, because really, it varies by state to state and district by district. So let's start there. So in general, pretty much most states are at-will states, which means that you can be fired for any reason as long as your employer is not discriminating against you, retaliating for being a whistleblower, or engaging in other protected activities like being part of a union. But unless it's illegal, they do have the right to fire you for whatever reason. I hate to say that. And some of you have experienced this too. If you saw my video about non-renewal notices, they can come up with whatever reason they want to not renew your contract and not have you come back. So what are some things that you can get fired for as a teacher? Public intoxication, where you're drinking to the point that it's leading to fights, or you're like passed out in public, that can get you fired. But this isn't the same as like going and having some beers with your friends or going to a winery. That is acceptable. But when you take it to an extreme and you're drawing attention to yourself and getting arrested for it, that could be grounds for letting you go. So the laws vary from state to state in terms of what is and isn't protected. Well, California has some of the strictest laws for firing employees at will. Employers cannot fire employees for drinking in public unless drinking in public can show that it had a negative impact on the employee's performance. Employers are more likely to fire employees if it's disruptive in the workplace or damaging to the reputation of that particular employer or company. I mean, some of it's really obvious. You might have heard recently of a third grade teacher who came to school intoxicated, and of course that teacher was fired because let's be real, they should be fired for that. Also, posting inappropriate material on social media. California protects employees from being fired for their social media posts. There are a few other states that are also in that realm where employees are really protected for things that they do during their personal time. But in most states, employers can fire employees for what they put on social media. Kind of shocking. And again, it's because most states are at-will states, and so whatever reason they come up with or whatever policies they have the right to establish those or use those as reasons to fire you. So if you have social media posts that maybe are criticizing the district or your administrator or something like that, apparently that could be grounds for letting you go. In this case, what I would do is read up on the policies that your district has. So your district may have a policy, or maybe it's just sort of like a blanket policy about whatever you say or do in public, but I would definitely look up on that because you just never know. Engaging in illegal activities, if you're convicted of a serious or violent felony, you're going to be out of a teaching job. And after doing some research, I realized that there are actually a lot of factors that play into whether or not you would get fired for doing something illegal. And these activities would definitely affect your ability to get another job, because as a teacher, we have to disclose if we've ever been convicted of a crime, even if it's something like a DUI. So that's something to take into consideration if you're going to be doing something that's not on the up and up. Another thing that you can get fired for, obviously, having a physical or romantic relationship with a student. I mean, enough said. Also, making discriminatory or offensive statements. Again, this should be self-explanatory, and let's not get caught up in the whole free speech First Amendment deal. Because in many districts and in the changing political and educational landscape, it really doesn't take much to offend someone. So you just definitely want to steer clear of making any kind of comments that could be perceived as offensive. It kind of sucks because we never really know if something that we say in our classroom is going to set someone off or make a student run home and tell their parents, and it's really hard to feel like we can do our jobs to the best of our abilities, but still we're being looked at under a microscope. So this made me wonder, what is that line that you can toe in terms of something that you do during your personal times? For example, if I live in California and I want to go buy marijuana, can I get fired for that? No, because it's illegal. But if you are out and about, smoking marijuana and getting high somewhere, then that could be a reason why your employer fires you, because you're doing that in public. My recommendations. So first, when you're in public, you definitely want to exercise discretion. So this doesn't mean that you can't go out and drink with your friends and your family, and that you can't smoke marijuana if it's legal in your state. But what it does mean is to just be mindful when you're in public. So you definitely don't want to get hammered, because that could be seen as questionable. And you want to think about the conversations that you're having with other teachers especially. You don't want to be talking about a particular student or a parent or a colleague, administrator, district. You don't want to be naming names in public, because that could get back to you and bite you in the butt. And also be mindful of what you post on social media. If you post things that could in any way be perceived as questionable, then you want to put your accounts in lockdown and have them be private. And I don't care what you post, honestly, I'm not going to judge those, but we can no longer use the excuse, "I didn't know," to justify the things that we put on social media. It's out there, it's public, and a lot of employers even look at your social media account before even deciding whether or not they want to hire you. So just really be mindful about it. And that's something that I think about too, and why I honestly don't post a lot on social media. It's not that I'm doing anything that would be questionable, but I just tend to be private, and I don't want a lot of people to know too much about me, because not only are those of you that are listening or watching my YouTube videos, I'm sure that you want to connect with me, but so do my students and their parents, because a lot of them have found me online, or they found me with my YouTube channel, or they Google me and they find pictures of me. I'm fairly Googleable, so I try to curate what I do put out on social media and on the internet so that what they find is not questionable. I'd also avoid illegal activities. I mean, it's your life. Just know that if you do decide to do something illegal, it could definitely catch up with you. Whether it's something that gets you fired or something that prevents you from future employment, not just teaching, just future employment in general. Just think twice about that. I'm not saying that you have to be goody-goody and that you have to constantly obey the law, but just know that when you're making those decisions, that again, we're not saying I didn't know, that we are doing them, knowing full well as adults that it could lead to consequences. I would also learn about your district's policies, whether it's conduct in public or social media. Knowledge is power, and it can prevent you from doing something that will later be regrettable. There are some districts where it's impossible to fire a teacher. It seems like teachers get away with coming to school drunk, or they do things that in a normal workplace they would have been fired for. But at the same time, teachers are also being let go for some of the stupidest things. So unless you have the power of tenure and you're in a district with a strong union, you definitely want to take the time to look up the district's policies, be in the know so that you're not sidelined if you do something. Now someone's coming after you for it. Now, I'm not telling you guys that you need to be a saint, because we're humans. There's good people in all professions, and then there's just some rotten people everywhere too. I don't think that we should be expected to be the moral compass for students. In fact, many parents would prefer that we not be the moral compass and that we just stick to teaching the content. But just use common sense in terms of the things that you do inside and outside of the classroom, because as weird as it might sound, you are somewhat of a mini celebrity because you encounter so many students in your life. I have 176 students every year for the past 22 years. You do the math on that. That's how many students and their families know who I am and who recognize me when I'm out and about. It doesn't mean that I don't get to be who I want to be and who I am, but it does mean that I am thoughtful about what I put out there and how I am when I'm in public, and it's just something that I know that I kind of signed up for. So bottom line, yes, live your lives how you want to, but at the same time, do it with the knowledge of the possible consequences. And it's up to you whether or not it's worth it, whether or not those consequences are worth the actions. And if living this way, in terms of having to censor the things that you do and say, doesn't align with your values, just know that these laws don't apply just to teaching. A lot of employers also have these types of policies, and so you're not necessarily going to be in the clear if you quit teaching. I mean, if you think about it, when companies get a celebrity to represent them, like in a commercial or on an advertisement, if that celebrity does or says something that goes against the values of that company, a lot of times that celebrity is let go. So it's not just teachers that have to worry about what they say and how they act. It's kind of everybody, and there could be repercussions no matter what job you have. Now, did you hear about that high school teacher who got in trouble for having an OnlyFans page? If not, be sure to click on this video next to get my take on that.